Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, FY 2023 Reimagining Justice, Testing a New Model of Community Safety, hosted by the Bureau of Justice Assistance. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Tenzing Laden, Senior Policy Advisor with BJA, to begin the presentation. Tenzing.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Tenzing Laden, Senior Policy Advisor with BJA, and we at BJA are really excited about this solicitation, as this solicitation is a part of our larger field-initiated activities to really form partnership with you and to help you take your ideas and bring the expertise to the table and really translate by testing approaches in your community, placing emphasis on being able to let community-based organization and leaders bring answers to the table, working with our criminal justice system and other service providers on critical issues. So this solicitation is one of several funding opportunities that are out there on the street right now to fund community-based organizations. We hope you will consider applying and partnering with us on this and other solicitations that are out there. And I'll include a link in the chat with our current open funding opportunities. So coming back to this solicitation, in terms of agenda, we will do a brief overview of OJP and BJA, an overview of the solicitation, followed by the eligibility and application requirements, as well as resources and support that is available to you. And then we will save about 10 to 15 minutes at the end for any questions that you may have for me today. And I'll be taking all the questions at the end. So if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A function or to the right at any time during this presentation. Next slide. All right, so we have our first poll question here. Has your organization been awarded federal grants in the past? And options here are yes, my organization has extensive experience with federal grants. Yes, though my organization does not currently have federal grants. My organization has limited experience with federal grants. And last, my organization is new to the federal grants and is looking to learn more. So I'll just give you a few more seconds to respond to this poll. All right, so let's see what the results are. So it looks like it's good. We have some folks who have had experience applying for federal grants and are interested, and then hopefully we'll for the folks who did not respond or are new to the federal grant process, we will be able to go over this solicitation, and I'll provide you links to the resources that are there that provide step-by-step guidance on how to apply for OJP or BJA grants. Next slide. So for those folks who are new, what is Office of Justice Programs? Office of Justice Programs provide grants, funding, training, research, and statistics for the criminal justice community in the field. OJP is one of the 3 grant-making offices within DOJ, along with COPS Office and Office of Violence Against Women. Assistant Attorney General Amy Solomon is the current head of OJP. And under Office of Justice Programs, there are 6 bureau or program offices that administers various OJP grant programs. So we have National Institute of Justice, which is our research, development, and evaluation agency within DOJ. Office of Victims of Crime, which supports a broader wave of programs and services that are really focused on helping the victims. Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, which supports states, local, and communities in their efforts to implement effective programs for children. Bureau of Justice Statistics, which is our primary statistical agency for the Department of Justice, and Smart Office, which provides jurisdiction with guidance regarding the implementation of the Adam Walsh Act. And lastly, the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and I'll go over this. And next slide. All right. So the Bureau of Justice Assistance was created in 1984 to reduce violent crimes, create safer communities, and reform our nation's criminal justice system. BJA strengthens nation's criminal justice system and helps America's state, local, and tribal jurisdiction reduce and prevent crime, reduce recidivism, and promote fair and safe criminal justice system. Our director is Carlton Moore. Director Moore was appointed by President Biden in February of 2022. Director Moore leads programmatic and policy efforts on providing a wide range of resources, including training and technical assistance to law enforcement, courts, corrections, treatment, reentry, justice information sharing, and community-based partners to address chronic and emerging criminal justice challenges nationwide. Next slide. And the way that BJA focuses on that is through funding, which invests in diverse funding streams to accomplish our goals, through education, including research, development, and delivery of what works, equipping our folks with tools and products to build capacity and improve outcomes. And lastly, partnering, consulting, connecting, and convening with our partners in the field. Next slide. All right. So the goal is with this solicitation is to improve community safety by identifying promising, new, and innovative community strategies that will reduce and prevent crime and improve community residents' perception of procedural fairness. Sorry, I have a little cold. Objectives under the solicitation is to create or identify and test an effective community-based safety model to serve as an alternative to traditional enforcement processes for addressing lower types of crime that will improve community safety and result in increased trust and legitimacy between law enforcement and residents. Our expectation is that this project will identify organizations, law enforcement agencies, and other entities within the site that will serve as partner and subawardees to enhance this strategy, capacity, and sustainability. Propose a community engagement strategy for locality or one or more economically disadvantaged neighborhoods within the locality where crime is persistent and concentrated. Next slide. Implement community engagement strategies, empowering residents to design and refine the community safety model, and making sure that this is meaningful engagement of communities as a co-producers of safety. Providing technical assistance and funding via subawards to project partners to support the implementation of community safety models. And page 9 of the solicitation has a section on roles and responsibilities of the intermediary organization. So I would ask you look up that section because it goes more in detail there. Next. Okay. Next is, sorry, slide back. Right. Next is working with research partners to assess needs, document implementation, and develop tools to support further implementation in the field, build knowledge, and enhance approaches. Lastly, increasing investments and building the capacity of local and community resources and institutions in the project sites that have ability to reduce and prevent crime as well as enhance community engagement. And you can find goals, objectives, and deliverables starting on page 9 of the solicitation. Next slide, please. So our next poll question asks, do you have plan to apply for grant under the solicitation? And responses are yes, no, undecided, or that your organization isn't eligible, but you are interested in learning about other programs. So I'll give you a minute to respond to that poll. Let me give a few seconds more. All right. So it looks like it's between my organization plans to apply and still deciding. So hopefully by the end of this presentation, you will decide to apply, and or if you have any questions, then you can put that in Q&A box, and then I can address those at the end of this presentation. Thank you for responding to the poll. Next slide. In terms of eligibility, the following applicants can apply under the solicitation: Native American tribal government that are federally recognized, Native American tribal organizations other than federally recognized tribal governments, nonprofits having 501(c) status with IRS other than institution of higher education, nonprofits that do not have 501(c)(3) status with IRS other than institution of higher education, private institution of higher education, public and state-controlled institution of higher education, and local non-law enforcement government agencies. Next slide. For the proposal design, a lot of what goes into proposal design is outlined on page 8 of the solicitation, and also is also included in objectives section, and it talks about things such as target population, identifying and recruiting, partnering organizations, etc. So I'll not repeat that, but things that I did want to highlight are these 3 bullets here. So make sure that your application provides detail on how you will engage residents and leaders in the target area in development and implementation of community-based safety model that will build capacity in community-based organizations, institutions, and service providers. The second is your approach should include not just community residents and leaders, but also local government agencies such as social services and community development agencies, local institutions such as schools and faith-based institutions, and those most impacted by community safety strategies, including those with lived experiences within the criminal justice system and crime victims. Lastly, you should describe the collaborative process where partners, including your subawardees, will execute a community engagement strategy and develop a community safety model within the first year of the board. Next slide. Right. Roles and responsibilities of intermediary organization. Applicants must identify the lead applicant and clearly describe the management plan for coordinating across the collaborating entities and administering the subawards. Applicant will be expected to determine its project partners in the application or once awarded. Project partners will receive training and technical assistance from the lead applicant or the fiscal agent throughout the length of the project, and will work in close partnership with the entities that will receive subawards. The applicant serving as the lead agency or a fiscal agent may be a national, regional, or more localized organization that has expertise in community safety strategies and an established capacity to work with entities outlined in the program design. The subawardees may use the funding to increase their capacity for community safety efforts in the chosen sites or sites if you have multiple, and they should be able to sustain them once the federal funding ends. And lastly, applicants will identify a researcher in the application who will collaborate with site-based partners, and any intermediary organizations to collect data on the nature and extent of crime in the sites or the site, and their residents' perception of law enforcement and safety, procedural fairness, and legitimacy. This will inform development of the safety model at regular intervals throughout its implementation. The researcher will also conduct a regular assessment of these data during the model's implementation phase and report findings to the lead agency and its site partners to learn whether any adjustments are needed during the implementation process. Next slide. So this solicitation was released on April 24th of this year. The closing date or the due date is June 27th. So you have more than a month to apply. And please remember that there are two deadlines and it's a two-step process. So the first deadline is June 20th, 8:59 p.m. Eastern time. And that is the deadline to submit SF 424 and SF LLL in grants.gov. The second deadline is of June 27th, 8:59 p.m. Eastern time. And the deadline, that is the deadline to submit a full application in Just Grants. And we highly encourage you to submit your application in grants.gov and Just Grants prior to the due dates to allow sufficient time to correct any errors and resubmit them by the submission deadline. So yeah, next slide. Award information. So we are expecting to make up to 3 awards under the solicitation with a maximum award amount of $2 million for the entire performance period of 36 months. And the start date for the award will be October 1st, 2023. And the total funding to be awarded under this solicitation is $5 million. Next slide. So here are the 11 application sections. So it's the SF 424 form, the proposal abstract, narrative, budget worksheet and budget narrative, indirect cost rate, if that's applicable, the financial management questionnaire, disclosure of process related to executive compensation, tribal authorizing resolution, lobbying documentation, high risk disclosure, and I'll go through the additional attachments that are required. But the most important thing I want to note is the sections that the items that say required. So SF 424 abstract narrative, budget worksheet. So those are the kind of required elements, and I would highly encourage you to use application checklist that's on page 30 of the solicitation to help guide you through the application submission process and to mark and to make sure that you're not missing any of those required pieces in your application. Next slide. Under additional items, we have timeline, and it should be for the full 36 months, and it should outline the goals and objectives, summarize the major activities, expected dates for completion, and the responsible agencies or partners, resumes for all grant-funded positions, attach relevant letter of support, and our MOU highlighting key partner and their support, their roles and agreement to collaborate. You have disclosure of pending application, research and evaluation disclosure, and other items that are listed here. Next slide. Abstract should not be more than 400 words, summarizing the proposed project. It needs to include applicant's name, project title, information around like the target area, such as geographic location, neighborhoods, population information, total fund requested, specific crimes to be addressed. I think we talked about goals, objectives, and activities, key partners, how you plan to use data to address the issue, any resources, that you know of that will support the project. And lastly, if you are seeking a priority consideration, please notate that please notate which priority consideration you are requesting, if it's 1A, 1B, or both. So all that should go under project abstract piece. Next is proposal narrative. So the proposal narrative must include 5 sections, and these sections will be weighted in scoring of your application. So you have the first is the statement of problem or description of issue at 20%, which evaluates the applicant's understanding of the program and issue to be addressed. Next is project design and implementation, which is at 40%. Evaluates the advocacy of the proposal, including goals, objectives, timeline, milestones, and deliverables. Capability and competencies for 25% evaluates the administrative and technical capacity of the applicant to successfully accomplish goals and objectives. So if you have a really strong community partner or a partnership, that's the place you can highlight and how that would be beneficial and aid your project. So those kind of discussions can go in there. Plan for collecting data required according to the solicitation, and that will evaluate applicants' understanding of performance data, reporting requirements, and the plan for collecting the required data. Last is the budget and the budget worksheet for 10%, and it evaluates our peer reviewers will be evaluating that piece for completeness, cost effectiveness, and allowability. For example, like whether the expense that budget line item is reasonable, whether that is something that's allocable to the award, and lastly, whether it's necessary project activity. So, yeah. Okay. And the proposal narrative should not exceed 15 pages and should be submitted as an attachment. Important thing to note here is the weight of each of these sections. So here, the big chunk of points are for program design and implementation. So you should use 15 pages of your real estate judiciously, maybe spend more time talking about project design and implementation piece compared to places where the scoring or the points are, say, not that much. Next, budget and budget narrative. So itemize the budget for each year of the grant and make sure the costs are explained in the budget narrative section. There is no match requirement for the solicitation. If you're planning to host events, do convening, bigger meetings, please address the prior approval, planning, and reporting of the conference meeting and training costs. Remember to budget for travel or training expenses for meetings or for visiting your project or sub-award sites. It can include airfare, hotel, per diem, ground transportation, etc. No more than 20% of your total budget may be used to support research or evaluation services. And lastly, if you are seeking a priority consideration under priority 1B, based on identification of at least one proposed subrecipient as a culturally specific organization, the proposed funding for the subrecipient in the web-based budget form must reflect a minimum of 40% of the award funding. The budget narrative must also describe how the activities will be funded with that minimum 40% of the award funding provided to the subrecipient, specifically as it relates to the priority consideration requested, and describe that in your capabilities and competencies section of the application. Next slide. So our last poll is here. Now that you have heard more about this program and the application process, are you ready to apply? So the options are yes, no, undecided. Hopefully those folks who were undecided are a little more decided now, but no pressure. And not eligible yet, but are interested in learning about the other programs that we have. So I'll give a minute. Thank you for doing the poll. It helps us see where you are leaning, but also for us to, find resources to help you guide. And yeah, like I can answer any questions that you may have at the tail end. So thank you for folks who completed the poll. Next. BJA resources. So the first link here takes you to the current funding opportunities, and the second link will take you to the solicitation page where we will be posting a recording of this webinar and the PowerPoint slides from this presentation. Please refer to the solicitation for all necessary information and required documents. Once again, this presentation was meant to highlight the most relevant information, but not everything was covered. So please read the solicitation carefully. And yeah. Last link here takes you to the site that will provide e-learning videos, reference guides, and other resources to help you successfully complete the application. So it will walk you through step by step what needs to happen, and the e-learning videos are really helpful in walking you through the process. Next slide. OJP Grant Application Resource Guide provides you guidance to assist prospective applicants in preparing and submitting the application for OJP funding. So that's another place to go and for training and for how to submit application purposes. Next. And here's the link to OJP's grants management system. Next slide. As I mentioned, applying for OJP grant is a two-step process. First step involves submitting SF424 and SFLLL in grants.gov. And if you have any issues, you can reach them at the customer hotline number, or you can email them. The second step requires the submission of full application in the Just Grant system. And if you have any technical issue with the application submission, please reach out to Just Grant's customer hotline, or you can email them. The hours of operation for both are listed here. Next slide. And what you see here on the screen is some different ways to connect with us so that you make sure that you are getting information about solicitation and programs and other support as soon as it's available. And you can text OJP with your email address to subscribe to the email for email updates. Next slide. You can also go to these links to subscribe to our Facebook or Twitter or YouTube. And then if you go to our website, bja.ojp.gov, you can both explore a lot of different opportunities and resources on our website, and also sign up to be able to be on our email listserv. So you can be sure to get all the information that you're looking for on an ongoing basis. Next slide. And if you have any questions about the solicitation or the solicitation requirement or the programming, please contact OJP Response Center at this email address. or you can call us at the number that's listed here. So if we don't get through all the questions today, then that would be the email address or phone number to call, and we'll be able to respond to your all your questions. Next slide. Again, important contact information for grants.gov and Just Grants, as well as OJP Response Center. So okay. So this one is just reminding again the two-step process. First step is submission of SF424 and SFLLL in grants.gov, and deadline for that is June 20th. The second step is submission of full application and Just Grants by the deadline of June 27th, 8:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure that you submit your application way ahead of the deadline. Next slide. Okay, here's the contact information for the grants.gov and Just Grants, as well as the OJP Response Center. Next slide. So now we can open up for any questions that you may have. Gerald, do you have any guidance on tech?
Yes, there's a couple questions in the QA.
All right. Uh, budget and budget narrative is not included in the 15-page limit. So that you should be submitting separately. So I think in Just Grants, there's an electronic spreadsheet of some sort. When you go in, you can include that. But the bottom line is budget and budget narrative are not accounted for in 15-page limit for the program narrative. Will this funding opportunity be offered again in future? It depends on appropriation and a lot of other factors, but we hope to, but we don't know for sure. So the question is, can you speak to what the tracking requirements are for those who receive grants? How often and what format? I'm assuming you mean by in terms of like the progress report reporting requirements, as well as federal financial reports that you submit. So the progress reports are semi-annual, twice a year, and then your federal financial reports are due quarterly, and what format? They are both due in Just Grant system. So hopefully that answers that question. So the question is, should the program director and researcher be separate individuals? I think it depends on what the program director and the researcher like. So I am thinking if we want to make sure that the research piece, there's independence and, the integrity of the research is maintained. So I'm not sure if the program director is the person who is overseeing the project and he's also the researcher, there might be conflict. But I think if you can address how there will not be any conflict, then that would be okay. But I think I'll just need a little more information on what the role of program director is as it relates to the project. Yeah. So the question is, our program is already established and is looking for funding to grow. As a result, crime in our area has already started to decrease. Will we be less competitive since we cannot provide statistics showing increasing and persistent crime? I would say, like, what are the crime factors. We are, I would encourage you to apply, because I think there might be, you know, different factors that are not addressed and why the crime is decreasing. It can be different factors. It might be temporarily decreasing, but so I would say that you should apply and explain. Yeah. And I think what I should also explain is the process, the review process for applications. So all the application, once the solicitation closes, it goes for review, the basic minimum requirements. So, making sure that abstract, budget worksheet and narrative, proposal, project narrative, and few other required pieces are part of the application. And once it passes the basic minimum requirement, then it goes to review by external reviewers. And then one external reviewer lists the top, I don't know, like 10, 15 applicants, and then it's reviewed. We go in and make sure that all the reviewers were, the comments and everything makes sense, and then provide additional feedback, and then that's how the selection happens. And I think the review criteria and all other aspects that go in the selection process is also outlined in the solicitation. So the question is, we will be applying as community safety responders department as a part of municipality. Are other town department, public safety, schools, etc. eligible partners? I would say yes. Yeah, as long as I think, yeah, answer is yes. I was overthinking that question. I think the question is, do you have any idea of how many proposals you anticipate receiving given the limited amount of anticipated awards? I think it has, this solicitation is relatively new. Last year was the first year. So I would say, I'm trying to remember how many applications we got last year, but I would say, like, it depends on, some year we see a small number, and this year we have been seeing a huge increase in applications for different many other solicitations. So I would not necessarily go by, last year number, but I think I'm trying to think, maybe, like, I would say anywhere from 20 to 25, maybe more, uh, is the number of application we are thinking, but I'm not 100% sure where it will be this year compared to last year. It's, this is very new solicitation, so it's hard to project that way. The question is, what are considered low level of crime? So we have not necessarily defined low level crime, I think. Let me pull. But I would say that that was intentional because we wanted to allow for to allow, more applications, and we didn't want to define because how low level crime is defined in different jurisdiction can vary. So yeah. Let me scroll down. Do you require a level of effort outline? So I think you would need to, in your budget narrative, when you have the budget line item and you are planning to have the level of FTE or full-time equivalent, you would need to outline that just by default, because you would need to put, you are planning to have X number of staff, 50% or 100%, and that's how you're funding, you're accounting for that budget line item. So, but I think in, you in the proposal narrative, you would describe the capability and competency part, like why, XY partner is important, and how they will contribute. But in narrative section, you don't necessarily need to. So it's not required, but I feel like you have to when you are doing your budget. Next question is, what matrix do you use to determine concentration and increases in the crime, neighbors versus local level data? So we are open to the matrix that you want to use and define, the level of crime and increase in crime. So we have not defined which data source you should or should not use. So we leave it up to the field. So yeah, I think another question similar. Are there any definition of minor offenses applicants can review? Didn't see anything specific in grant info. I think it was intentional. We wanted it to keep it broader, and how minor offenses are defined in different jurisdictions can be different. So, all right. So the question is, if we have a strong neighborhood and partner support, but plan to procure for specific services once planning period is over, would the MOU signed by community partners and outlining their role as a part of planning process to build a model be enough for the application? I think so. I think, that should be good. Okay, so the next question is, my organization has designed a community engagement process for developing a community safety model. We have identified target areas and had productive discussion with stakeholders in those areas. Our plan is very much in line with the stated purpose of this opportunity. However, we are the culturally specific organization and that would be implementing the project. Is there a way for us to apply directly for funding? If not, you can uh, could you clarify more? So we heard from the field that smaller nonprofits and newer nonprofits or smaller organizations have hard time applying for federal grants. There's a lot of processes, and they might not have all the requirements, or they might not meet requirements, or it also in terms of like resources needed to apply for grants. So I think that we took that intermediary route to allow for a bigger organization to apply for other smaller organizations, or or for a national, regional, or local to apply for smaller project sites. So that was the intent, to be able to reach out to more community-based organizations that might not be able to apply. So I think that's, so what they would be, the main lead applicant would award subawards to, and this is just an example. So main lead applicant who receives the award will identify project sites that they will be funding through subawards, and provide guidance, provide any technical assistance need that these project sites might have, and help these subawarded project sites to make impact, or to go through like the and I'm just this is random example, like go through like the evaluation process of where they are, look at data, and then help them with planning piece of it, and then help them through implementation, and then after implementation is done, like help them through assessment and evaluation piece. So guide the smaller subawardees through that process. I think that was our intent. Okay. I think there are a few questions in the chat section. Right, Daryl?
Yeah, I'm seeing a few that have been put in that section as well.
Okay. So yeah, if a deadline has passed for this solicitation, deadline has not passed. But if for someone asks about deadlines and stuff, so if a deadline has passed, there's nothing we can do. Once the deadline has passed, we can't add unless you were not able to apply because of technical issue in submission in grants.gov by that say deadline of 20th. Then make sure if you are having technical issue, make sure you document that, and that then we can go through technical appeal process. So say on June 20th in the morning you're having issue, you can't submit your application or SF424 form or SFLL in grants.gov, make sure you call them, send a follow-up email, make a document trail of that you were trying to submit it and there was issue. But I think once the deadline passes and there's no, report of an issue that you had submitted, then I think there's not much that we can do after the deadline has passed. Okay. I think around the question, so there's a question about whether a county-run juvenile assessment center, which connects you to the county attorney's office, whether they would be considered eligible applicant as a government-run agency, but does not perform law enforcement services. So that is something that I will get back to you. I just want to make sure, I want to make sure that whether it's just related, whether because we said local government, that's not law enforcement entity. So I just want to make sure that, that county attorney's office does not fall under that. So I'll double check and I'll respond to the person who sent that question via an email later. So next question is, do you recommend that organizations with the same program focus but in different cities come together and apply? Sure. I think that's, yeah, I think that we don't have any issue. I think the only thing is when you apply in just grants, one agency has to be the lead agency or the primary or fiscal agent, and then the other can be a partnering agency. But the system will allow only one lead applicant. And what's the maximum amount an agency can apply? I think we said it was, make sure, I think it's maximum award amount is 2 million for the entire performance period of 36 months or 3 years. So yeah. Daryl, are there any questions that I have not responded to? I'm just going through. I see one. How should applicants address pending applications, including federal funding for related or complementary funding that might impact the design and implementation of their strategy? So so when you're applying for, so say for example, like there's another solicitation with BJA that is doing similar, you are doing similar work? No. It's a complementary funding, but I guess you can mention that in your application that you had submitted proposal for a work that's complementary, but not doing exactly same thing. Because otherwise, like everyone has to submit in their application duplication in disclosure of pending applications. So to make sure that you are not requesting fund for exactly the same thing, to do same thing with same scope, same project site, same everything with any other entity. So, we're not duplicating the effort, or, so you would need to do that disclosure. But if it's complementary, you can make sure to include that you had submitted application, that's complementary in nature to the application you're submitting under this solicitation, and how it would be beneficial, that how that X project would help this project, or but I think it would be important to say that regardless of whether that other project gets funded or not, how this project is independent of that, because what you don't want is not get that funding and you can do this proposal that you're submitting under this because it was so relying on that other project. So I hope that's, I hope it's clear. I think, let me just look at one. Okay, I think that's all the questions that came in, Daryl, right?
Yeah, that seems to be at this time, yes.
All right, go ahead.
And Tenzing, I will remind all the attendees today that the PowerPoint transcript and recording will be posted to the BJA website. So when those items are available, we will send an email out to all the registrant list, and you'll be able to access those to reference as you prepare your applications.
Yeah. All right, so I think I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and we are very much looking forward to all exciting and very innovative proposals that you will be sending our way. So thank you so much for taking time today. And if you have any other questions and anything that was not clear, or we didn't get to, please email those to OJP Response Center, grants at ncjrs.gov, and they will definitely respond to any and all questions you have regarding this solicitation, or any confusion or that you have, or if you just want to talk about anything, they will be able to provide you help. Okay, so I'll pass it back to Daryl. Thank you everyone for being on this webinar today.
So on behalf of the Bureau of Justice Assistance and our panelists, we want to thank you for joining today's webinar. This will end today's presentation.